My name is Laura Kendall, and I was 30 years old when my world collapsed in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. I was standing in a small office with beige walls and buzzing lights when my phone vibrated with a message that did not feel real. Divorce filed, terms attached, call your lawyer. My hands went numb, my breath shortened, and the first thing I felt was not sadness but shock, because just weeks earlier he had promised stability, security, and support while I carried our child. I drove home in silence, every red light stretching longer than it should. And when I walked into the apartment, he was already there with his suitcase packed and a calm expression that felt rehearsed. He did not shout or argue, he explained. He said he had fallen in love with someone else, a model, someone exciting, someone who matched his new life, and then he slid a document across the counter and explained my allowance. $5 a day, food and basics only, nothing extra, no discussion. I felt my stomach tighten, not from hunger but from humiliation. I had left my job at his request, paused my own career plans, trusted his word. And now that trust had been priced like a budget line, I was pregnant, unemployed, and suddenly disposable. My emotions moved fast: anger, fear, disbelief, then something quieter: resolve. I packed my clothes while he avoided eye contact. I noticed how quickly he erased me, how icily he stepped into a future that did not include me or our child in any meaningful way that night. I sat alone on a borrowed mattress in a smaller apartment I barely afforded, listening to traffic outside and counting coins on the table. $5 did not stretch far, and that was the point. Control dressed up as generosity. I felt manipulated, underestimated, and challenged, and I hated that part of me that wanted to beg for fairness. Because survival demanded something stronger, I had always been observant, detail-focused, creative under pressure, and now those traits felt like tools instead of traits. I started tracking every expense, every thought, every skill I still owned, writing ideas in a notebook while my child moved inside me like a reminder of responsibility. The stakes were clear from the start: fail quietly and stay dependent, or risk everything and try to build a way out. My emotions were raw, but my mind was sharp. Betrayal has a way of waking instincts that comfort keeps asleep. I noticed problems around me, inefficiencies, needs people complained about but never solved, and slowly an idea began to take shape. Fragile but possible. I did not know yet how far it could go, only that standing still would crush me. And if you want to see how strength grows in moments like this, subscribe to the channel and stay with me, because the next choice I made started a chain of events that no one expected, especially him. And as I stared at my notebook that night, one question kept repeating in my head: what happens when the person you tried to control stops playing small? Before everything fell apart, my relationships looked stable from the outside, but cracks had always been there, if I am honest. My parents raised me to value patience and compromise, sometimes too much. My mother believed endurance was love. My father believed silence kept peace, and I carried both lessons into my marriage without questioning them. My younger sister warned me more than once that I was shrinking myself, that I gave too much credit and took too little space. But I brushed it off as concern mixed with jealousy. At work I used to be dependable and invisible, the one who fixed problems quietly while others took credit. My former manager praised my dedication but never promoted me, and I accepted that too. Ambition felt selfish back then. Friendships thinned after marriage, not from conflict but from neglect. Dinners cancelled, calls returned late. My world slowly narrowed to him and the life he designed. He was charming in public, generous with compliments when people watched, but private conversations often ended with subtle corrections, suggestions framed as guidance, and I learned to adjust without realizing I was being trained. His family reinforced it. His mother treated me kindly but never as an equal, always reminding me how fortunate I was, how lucky I should feel. Favoritism leaned toward him in every disagreement, and I absorbed it quietly. Professional contacts faded after I left. My job colleagues stopped calling once I was no longer useful. And that silence taught me how transactional respect could be. After the divorce, those same relationships reacted differently. My parents were supportive but cautious, offering advice that leaned toward safety, not justice. My sister was angry on my behalf and pushed me to fight harder. Friends split into groups, some uncomfortable and distant, others curious but passive. His friends vanished completely. Loyalty followed convenience, and that stung more than I expected. Internally, I began questioning my past choices, not with regret but with clarity. I saw how often I had chosen comfort over confrontation, how ambition had been delayed in the name of harmony, and how that pattern left me vulnerable when control replaced care. Resentment surfaced slowly, not just toward him but toward my own silence. Yet love for the life growing inside me softened that edge. I did not want bitterness to become a blueprint. I wanted strength without cruelty, ambition without revenge. Still, tension simmered beneath every interaction. Phone calls with lawyers felt strategic. Conversations with family felt filtered. Even supportive words carried expectations. I sensed that future betrayals might not come from obvious enemies but from familiar faces choosing convenience again. The pressure to stay agreeable remained, yet something inside me resisted now. Every relationship felt like a mirror reflecting who I used to be and who I was becoming. And as I navigated these shifting dynamics, I realized the real conflict was not just with him. It was with the version of myself that had accepted less than she deserved, and that understanding made the next steps heavier. Because change always tests relationships first, and I could feel that test approaching even if I did not yet know its form. The first real challenge hit when I realized the full extent of his plan. I had assumed $5 a day was humiliating but manageable if I was careful, but the reality was harsher. Groceries, medical visits, rent. Everything added up faster than the money could cover. I had hidden savings tucked away in old accounts, but accessing them meant revealing to the bank that I was no longer connected to him in ways that could trigger legal scrutiny. Friends offered advice, but each suggestion carried risk. One wrong step could make him claim control or delay my access to necessities. I began tracking my daily expenses with obsessive precision, every dollar documented, every choice calculated, and then came the first real betrayal outside the divorce. A colleague I trusted, someone who had always praised my work ethic, called me to warn me about my plans, hinting that pursuing independence could backfire, that I might face retaliation. I felt a mixture of anger and doubt. My mind raced. Was I naive to trust people in the world I was about to enter? Did my ambition blind me to potential traps? The internal conflict gnawed at me. One part of me screamed to retreat, to accept the small allowance, and avoid confrontation. The other part was louder, demanding action, demanding proof that I could survive and thrive. The stakes were now not just financial but moral. I had to decide if I would operate quietly, staying under the radar, or challenge the boundaries placed by someone who believed they had already won. The tension in my apartment grew with each passing day. Silence amplified every thought. The outside world seemed indifferent, yet every interaction, every message, every offer of help, felt like a test. A subtle pressure to make the wrong move. I realized that even people who seemed supportive could have hidden motives. Some hoped I would fail. Others were unsure if I could succeed. I questioned my judgment repeatedly, doubting my instincts while simultaneously understanding that hesitation would cost me. I wrestled with fear, frustration, and resolve. The moral dilemma became clear. Do I compromise my integrity for temporary security, or risk exposure, stress, and uncertainty to reclaim control? As I paced the small apartment, counting coins and sketching ideas, I felt the weight of responsibility not just for myself but for the life growing inside me. Every decision mattered. Every hesitation could be exploited. And in that moment I realized that the challenge was not just rebuilding a future. It was proving to myself that betrayal would not define me, that being underestimated could become an advantage. Yet the tension remained unresolved, the path forward hazy, the threat of failure tangible. I closed my eyes for a brief second, feeling my child move. A reminder of why retreat was not an option, and the question loomed heavier than ever. Could I navigate a world stacked against me and still emerge stronger, smarter, undefeated? Every choice I made after that first spark of determination carried weight I had never felt before. I decided to start small, offering services online using skills I had put aside for years. And almost immediately I ran into complications. Clients questioned my credibility, assumed inexperience, and even friends hesitated to recommend me openly because they feared backlash from him or his circle. I faced ethical dilemmas constantly. One client asked for shortcuts I could not ethically take. Others offered opportunities that risked my privacy or safety. I had to decline. Each refusal meant slower progress and mounting pressure. Financially I was strained. $5 a day stretched impossibly thin. Every cent mattered. And yet I refused to beg or accept charity that felt humiliating. Emotionally, I swung between exhaustion, fear, and exhilaration. The uncertainty gnawed at me as I balanced invoices, late nights, and prenatal appointments. I noticed subtle manipulations from people who had once appeared friendly, hints of discouragement masked as advice, the fear that someone might report my progress to him, or worse, attempt to sabotage me, grew heavier with each passing week. My relationships became testing grounds. Every conversation measured, every smile calculated. I could not afford blind trust anymore. I had to anticipate motives behind each gesture of kindness or curiosity. At home, I worked tirelessly, turning ideas into tangible results, using old contacts and new strategies to gain traction, and slowly momentum built. But with every milestone came a new wave of tension. The more I achieved, the more I felt eyes on me, the more subtle pressure I sensed. His friends, acquaintances, even strangers, seemed to evaluate my every move, ready to dismiss or discredit. I wrestled with doubt, yet determination kept me moving. I realized that this was not just about money or recognition anymore. It was about proving that he had miscalculated entirely. That removing me from his world had not diminished me, but had sparked a force he had underestimated. The pressure was relentless, but it honed my focus, sharpened my instincts, and every decision carried the thrill of risk. The stakes escalated quickly, and as I prepared to pitch a major client, the culmination of weeks of careful planning, anxiety clawed at me, fear of exposure, of failure, of judgment, but I also felt a quiet satisfaction that every step, even the painful ones, were mine, self-directed. The power was in my hands, and yet, the looming question lingered like a shadow over my work. What would happen if the wrong person discovered my progress, if someone close turned against me, or if a single misstep destroyed weeks of effort? My pulse quickened, the apartment hummed with tension and possibility. Every notification, every call, every email could tip the balance. And I stared at the screen late that night knowing that the next move I made would change everything. Because escalation had a rhythm, a danger, and an opportunity all at once, and I could not afford hesitation even for a second. Just when I thought I had mapped every risk, every person, every possibility, the truth hit like a lightning strike. I discovered that one of the people I had trusted most, a mentor who had guided me through early business ideas, had been feeding information to him, subtly, quietly, without my knowledge. Every strategy I had shared in confidence, every calculation, every plan, had been filtered through someone I believed was on my side. The realization left me cold, my hands shaking as I held my notebook. Disbelief making my chest tight. I could not believe I had been so careful with strangers, and missed the betrayal that came from someone familiar. I replayed every conversation, every meeting, trying to spot the signs, the subtle suggestions that now seemed sinister. I felt anger, deep and sharp, at the audacity of someone betraying me while pretending mentorship. At the same time, I felt sorrow, not just for the deception but for the years of trust I had invested, for the confidence I had placed in someone who had no intention of protecting it. My mind spun with questions. How long had this been happening? How much had they already reported? How much damage could have been done without my knowing? I realized that my achievements, small as they were, had been visible to him long before I intended, that every step forward might have been anticipated, yet beneath the shock, a spark of resolve ignited. If they believed I would crumble, they underestimated me completely. This revelation reframed everything. The betrayal was not just about money or control, it was about strategy, it was about power. And suddenly, my journey felt more urgent. Every decision had to be sharper, more deliberate. I could no longer rely on assumptions about loyalty. Every contact had to be scrutinized, every communication had to be encrypted. I felt my pulse race, fear mixed with exhilaration. I had been blindsided but not defeated. I realized that the hidden web around me could also be a tool if I learned to navigate it carefully. Every obstacle could become a leverage point. Every misstep from the wrong person could be a chance to regain control. I made a mental note to adjust my plans, to protect what I was building, to anticipate hidden eyes watching my every move. And yet, even as I plotted quietly, a knot of tension remained. The realization that I could not trust all allies, that some masks hid cunning intent, that my own progress had been both observed and misrepresented, kept me awake, the suspense unbearable. I breathed slowly, steadying my mind, knowing that the next action I took would either confirm my advantage or expose a vulnerability. And as I stared at the screen late into the night, the weight of the revelation pressed down. I understood that the story I thought I controlled was already far more complex than I imagined, and the question lingered: what would happen when he realized I knew the truth? And how far would I push before the game changed completely? The moment of decision came suddenly, a pressure I had felt building for weeks. Every choice, every risk, every betrayal converging into a single point where hesitation was no longer an option. I had been working tirelessly, refining my project, securing clients, building a small team of trustworthy people who shared my vision. Yet the discovery of hidden leaks and the constant shadow of doubt left me anxious and tense. I sat in my small office late at night, the soft hum of my laptop filling the room, staring at the numbers, the plans, the deadlines, wondering if I should pull back, scale quietly, protect what I had already accomplished. And then the thought hit me. If I backed down now, if I played it safe, I would be giving them control over my life again, letting fear dictate the terms. I could continue slowly, cautiously, barely surviving, or I could act boldly, use the momentum I had built, reveal my progress to the world. Secure contracts, partnerships, and credibility that could not be undone. The risk was massive. A misstep could destroy my reputation, my finances, and even jeopardize the security I had fought to create for myself and my child. Yet the alternative was stagnation, submission, and a life defined by limits imposed by someone who had already underestimated me. My chest tightened, emotions collided, anger, fear, exhilaration, and determination all at once. I made a deep breath, feeling my child move inside me, and I knew that hesitation would be a mistake, that calculated courage was the only path forward. I picked up my phone and sent the first messages to potential clients, drafted proposals that I had waited months to release. I contacted the press discreetly, letting the story of my resilience and innovation begin to spread. I felt the consequences immediately. Inquiries poured in. Skepticism collided with interest. Some people doubted me. Some were impressed. Every interaction mattered. Every word could tip the balance. Yet for the first time I felt the power resting in my hands. The control that had been denied for so long. I also knew there would be backlash, that people would question my motives, my integrity, perhaps even attempt to discredit me. I accepted that as part of the risk, understanding that nothing truly valuable comes without challenge. By the end of that week, I had secured significant contracts, small but meaningful wins. The financial pressure eased slightly. My reputation began to grow, and I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from revenge but from mastery. From asserting my agency, my child, my vision, and my values all entwined in this success. And as I sat back in my chair, the apartment quiet except for the faint hum of technology, I understood that this decision had defined me, that the bold choice had reshaped my path, and that while challenges would continue, I had proven to myself that resilience, focus, and courage could overcome betrayal, manipulation, and doubt, and I could not wait to see what the next chapter held. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize now that the most valuable lessons came from the moments that felt unbearable. Trust is fragile, and placing it in the wrong hands can hurt deeply, but it also teaches clarity. I learned that responsibility is not just about surviving, it is about protecting what matters most, not only for myself but for the life growing inside me. Boundaries are not selfish, they are essential. They define who we are and prevent others from taking more than we can give. I used to bend too easily, allow manipulation to shape my choices, and ignore my instincts in the name of harmony or loyalty. Now I see that respecting my own limits and trusting my judgment is what gave me the power to rebuild. The betrayal, the financial pressure, the isolation, all of it forced me to become resourceful, creative, and fearless in ways I could not have imagined. I discovered strength I never knew I had, the ability to plan strategically, to navigate difficult relationships, to transform adversity into opportunity. Yet none of this came without emotional cost. The anger, the doubt, the sleepless nights, the constant weighing of risks, each one tested my resolve. I had to balance ambition with integrity, action with patience, and courage with reflection. And in the end, the greatest victory was not proving anyone wrong, but proving to myself that I could rise above the limits others tried to impose, that I could act with intelligence, empathy, and determination even when the world seemed to be against me. I watched as my small project grew into something respected and valuable. Clients and colleagues now treated me with admiration and trust, a testament not just to skill but to resilience. I learned that life does not guarantee fairness, but it rewards those who persist with clarity of purpose. I also realized that forgiveness is not about absolving others. It is about freeing ourselves from bitterness. I do not carry anger toward him anymore. I carry lessons, focus, and confidence. And that perspective allows me to make decisions from strength rather than reaction. As I reflect, I see that the relationships I once thought unshakable were often tests of character. That some people leave our lives and some stay because their presence aligns with our growth. I ask myself and the audience, what would you have done in my place when stripped of security, when betrayed? When forced to start over with almost nothing, would you shrink or would you rise? The answer is not simple, but the choice defines the path. And as I look forward now, I feel calm, grounded, and ready, because I understand that resilience, self-respect, and perseverance are the true foundations of life. I closed the chapter of betrayal, but I carry forward the lessons, the strength, and the vision, and while the past shaped me, it does not control me, and that awareness, more than money, more than revenge, is the most powerful legacy I could leave my child and myself.